Yo, people. This is T22 So Win Channel Live by Poker Stream. This is my VIP guest, Ryan Fee of Upswing Poker, Coin Central, Wsop bracelet winner, like one of the real bracelets, not like what's going on now. And you had a little.
Technically only half a bracelet, but yeah.
The what?
Technically only half a bracelet, but yeah, a bracelet's a bracelet. We'll take it.
Hey, when you win it with one of your best buddies, it's all the sweeter than a single bracelet, the solo one. See, there you go. My spinner or what? Also, Zigzag in Warcraft 3.
Yeah, school. Yeah, back in the day.
And you had some collectible card game history.
Yeah, I was like a regional Yu-Gi-Oh champion. I think my trophy's actually in the garage right now. But like I was like
put mine up here.
Yeah, I was gonna say what is that trophy?
That's StarCraft World Champ.
Sick.
Yeah.
Were you Terran? That's like a Marine up there.
I was random.
Shut up, really? Wow. Yeah. That's actually like ridiculously G. No one plays random.
Well, supposedly whoever the GOAT is right now said he's going to random now. But
wait, really?
That's what he said. But like so Jay Severson was the first vanilla StarCraft world champion. He the co-founder of chess.com. He randomed. I'm the first Brood War world champion. I randomed. So we're street, man. Anyway, that was your introduction, and man, it's been a long time. You've been MIA. You were in like Africa, like Dave Chappelle, and
yeah, man, America just got too much for me, so I had to yellow off.
Oh man, so I don't remember like the last time you were on. You played like on Live with the Bike a long time ago. Then I had you on for a call in, and then I think I went to your place in LA, and then you went back to Vegas, and then I think you went to Africa. You're hard to keep track of.
Yeah, it's been a lot of bouncing around LA, Orange County, and Vegas as an adult life and a poker player. But it's been Vegas the last couple of years now. And although from like the end of last summer, the beginning of this summer, I was doing a little bit of traveling all over, and I was in mostly Bali, Thailand, and South Africa, just looking for like a dramatic break in the monotony of Vegas. And I would definitely say I found it. And then it's this weird thing where it's always, then it was being back in Vegas for the first month, especially was like, I was like so grateful to be back. And now, especially that it's like ridiculously hot, I'm like, you know what, what are flights to Mexico looking like right about now? So yeah, I feel like it's a never ending battle.
Need that second bracelet.
Yeah, I only played one event this year, sadly, and didn't last too long. So it's not meant to be this year. That's okay. It was online bracelets. I want the real thing. I want to be able to get 16 to take down Helmuth and have him tilt his face off.
So, yeah, let's go over your poker history first, and then we'll roll into what you've been up to.
So I started playing. I mean, I feel like honestly, I feel like poker for me really started in when I used to live in downtown Philadelphia, and then I moved to the suburbs when I was 10, and then I kind of and then I was like more in my house and more introverted, more into games, and I feel like it kind of really started around then. But then, truth be told, I ate an eighth of mushrooms. My first ever psychedelic experience on Christmas break, 2006. And it just like blew my mind, like just changed the way I thought about the world forever. And I came out of it, and like life at the time, like really hadn't been going that well for me. And I came out of it and I was like, man, like I got to get my shit together, and like, I got to make some motherfucking money. So yeah, given how deep I was in the games, it felt like that was sort of the right path. So I just sort of found 2+2 and started taking games really seriously, or started taking poker really seriously. And my first lesson was sort of bankroll management. Which is a bit of an interesting, that was like my first most important lesson. And now I'm actually in the process of reading the Professor, the Banker, and the Suicide King, the Andy Beal story.
Yeah.
It talks about how like the conventional like live guys, like they were just all went broke. And that was just like, it was almost like this weird badge of honor. And I never came even remotely close to going broke. I mean, like maybe in the very beginning when I was just kind of like underrolled, but after I got to like after I was like a solid winning 1-2 player, like it was never, yeah, like even when I went on like huge downswings, I was never remotely in the vicinity of going broke. So that was like a big sort of important lesson. And honestly, that's kind of like one of the lessons I would say I teach today. Because yeah, I mean, there's a lot of players. Like, I mean, Doug had like a post about almost giving up in poker and then coming back. But there, I mean, there's a lot of guys today that, you know, had they ran a little bit worse, that they wouldn't have gone on to have success. So a lot of them are just sort of lucky in that sense. Like, you know, like they might have just threw their hands up at one point and then just been like, fuck this, gone. So, you know, I guess one of the pieces of advice I give to guys starting out is that you really want to distance yourself as much as possible from the risk of ruin, because it really is this like incredible marathon. It's just not going to happen overnight. So yeah, it should never really be the other thing is that you should be able to play. And a very, very common question I get is, I just keep losing and I'm tilted and I can't think properly and focus. Which started to happen to me in the sort of back half of my career a bit, where like I would just, I would either be playing too much or be losing a lot and then wouldn't be able to properly focus. And there's no, I mean, the trick is just not play. You just can't play for a day, a week, a month, 3 months, whatever it takes. Yep. And then once you sort of regain your composure, you can play again. And this is sort of like a non-negotiable thing. And like how people end up, you know, essentially undermining their own successes by playing when this is happening. And this sad truth is that, you know, and if it sucks because you're so aggravated, you want to like take all that aggravation and focus it onto something. And you could, you know, pick up a hobby. I've been playing a lot of racket sports lately, do that or whatever. But you simply can't play poker. So yeah, that was, you know, anyway, so that was sort of like the first lesson. Started playing cash games, moved all the way up from 25 NL to say 400 NL at the end of my first year, 400 NL to 2K NL at the end of year 2. At this time living, essentially like I left university, I was just living with my parents. And then I played my first ever live poker tournament and won it somehow, like, which was like doubled my roll. Like I had 95% of myself in this LAPT. At first was like 285K. I actually had, you know, there's like a giant novelty check lying around here somewhere, and they used to still give. That's like they don't give those out anymore, which I feel is like it's like a travesty. Like that was one of the best part. Like, dude, a giant fucking. You have no idea, by the way, how many otherwise you would assume competent people ask you, like, do you cash that? Like, what do you you have to take out of the bet? Like, it's unbelievable. It's unfucking believable. And just like, dude, not giant novelty checks are epic. So yeah, that was sweet. And then I don't know. And then from there, I kind of moved out to California and then just sort of played online, did okay for a couple of years. And then right after Black Friday happened, moved to Vancouver to keep playing online, and then really felt like that was kind of be my year. And then yeah, I guess it was 2012, 13, and 14 really had like 3 pretty big breakout years. Yeah, that stuff was all really good. A lot of great high stakes action back in those days, and then 14 a lot of tournaments as well. And then yeah, after a year of tournaments was like this fucking sucks. Fuck this. Yeah, and then was kind of searching around for like something to do, and felt like I'd kind of done everything in poker at this point. So I guess what's the natural step to take then? Start a training site. And then I guess did that, and then won the bracelet, and then it was really I'd done everything. And yeah, I guess that's sort of like it in a nutshell.
Yeah, we're gonna come out, or Live at the Box gonna come out with a YouTube style video of what is an actual poker career. So you basically hit everything.
Yeah,
like that's
yeah, in like a very crazy fashion. And I didn't really set out to do it either. Like a lot of that, especially winning the first live tournament or the bracelet. Yeah, a lot of it was just I more stumbled my way into it and was like, I guess I'll reg.
Must be nice.
Yeah, Yeah, it was good. It was
And you
good.
never went broke? I mean, honestly, how many people can say that? I know, like, I could maybe name up to 5 people that didn't go broke.
Yeah, I actually, it's an interesting topic. I've never really broached this topic with very many people. So I don't actually know. I know a lot of my close friends never really came all that close, or I guess my friends or compatriots that were in my poker class, so to speak. But I don't know. And I do know that there's a lot of people in that class that I haven't seen around for years now. So I can only imagine what's would happen there. So
You mean like your peers of your generation, not like your
yeah,
close
yeah, yeah.
friends? Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Like, yeah, guys that like I remember seeing their names in the lobby all the time. And then, back in 2008, 9, 10, 11, and then 11, 12, 13, 14, I stopped seeing them. And now they're definitely way gone for sure. Whole
Well,
new crowd.
gone as in retired or gone as in not in action?
I don't know. That's not, I mean, yeah, not an online action. They could still be playing live. They could be doing God only knows what, but yeah, as far as I know, they're out of the mix. So
Yeah, I mean, um I went broke year 11, which
holy shit,
like
really?
yeah, which is stupid because it's like I know everything, like it shouldn't happen, but a lot of it, like we've talked about this too, like the family issues, like it's just not sustainable, like with my situation, and plus I was getting outdated anyway, or not, I don't know, I just wasn't working as hard, so and I was trying to transition out with like a long thing.
I never really, yeah. I mean, like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of people that have had like seemingly like a high level of productivity for a long time. I mean, I don't really know what he's up to, but it seems like Durr.
Yeah,
Um, also seems, I don't talk to Jungle all that much anymore either, but like, it seems like Jungle still has like quite a fire to play. But like, other than that, man, like, I don't really know all that many guys that just like everybody, even if they did phenomenally well. Doug maybe prime example of this, really left on top. Um, just didn't have the fire to do it anymore.
yeah.
It takes more than just ability.
Oh yeah, you have to like really, really want to. Actually, I had Brian Mycon on yesterday, and he talked about it too. Just like you know, you do it for like 10 years, and then you definitely should move on. But a lot of people really like clicking buttons, like Jungle. And by the way, if you want to play him, you could probably, he's ghosting somewhere. I'm just kidding. Oh, too real.
I'm sure he's in the mix somewhere.
But yeah, like going broke year 11 is like stupid because like you know everything like how to happen. But me and my peers like Bryce Yockey and Sean Snyder and a bunch of other people, we just completely underestimated the variance of live.
Sure.
Like that was yeah, and I got the PLO bug too. So Sean and
Also, I
huh?
imagine edges aren't what they used to be.
Yeah, like if I had the PLO knowledge that the Upswing course has. Shout out to you, Chris Wayner, and Dylan Weissman. It would just be like mopping it up. It was like so primitive back then, and
Yeah.
I was dumb. I wasn't like I was in the phase of like I could outplay everybody, and I did in the beginning, and then the cards catch up to you.
Oh no, yeah. Don't do that.
It
That really will not work in PLO.
yeah. So whatever. I've I've definitely learned my lesson, and we had this conversation too, and shout out to Nick Stonington, the number one stoner. He's a
Yeah. Shout
little
out to Nick.
little young one of ours, but I keep I keep telling him about these things, and then he asks you, and he's like, "Yeah, Ryan Fee said the same thing." I'm like, "No kidding!" Like, like you swear we're trying we're trying to screw you with like advice that young people don't want to hear, but where's it going with this? Oh yeah, I mean just like but I guess you guys also had a conversation too about like when you get older and you want to stabilize things and settle down. And like remember we talked like a couple years ago. You were at the bike and you were asking why I didn't play on my own and why I was propping. Well, propping is just like incredibly lower stress and just like you don't have to like scour for games and search. And yeah, my hourly is much lower, but all I have to do is literally show up. Like I don't even
Sure.
care what my hourly is, you know. And then I could do Live at the Bike, I could do the other project, you know, and just, you know, it's a better life. Like all the people I used to play with, they've like aged like 10, 15 years, man, in like 2 years.
Yeah, Doug did make this point about there was like some like high roller final table, and like everybody at the table was bald and they're all like in their late 20s, early 30s, and he was just like, what the fuck is this? Like,
Yeah, exactly. So like I, I'm not complaining about the run out. I definitely had a couple harsh years after, but it wasn't the poker that was really that should have killed me. But you did Upswing, which was a marvelous piece of work, like as a training course, but also as a company execution.
thank you.
Like you, Matt, and Doug, like you know me, I do the startup stuff. I did startup stuff like 20, 25 years ago. So I have a very high appreciation for you guys' execution of
Thanks. We've
everything.
had, yeah.
Like one of the things is when I compliment like you guys or you know Garrett or Andy, it's like I hope I'm complimenting you guys on the right things.
Yeah, no, yeah, no, I appreciate you definitely, you know, I feel like you are one of the few people that understand, can like really look at it from like our perspective more than sort of like you as like a consumer or sort of like an outsider, like looking at, you can understand how difficult it is to, it's really easy to criticize
Create.
something. It's a lot harder
Oh
to,
yeah, to synthesize it. There's so many portions, and just like running a small company or a large one, you really like what your strengths and weaknesses are so glaringly apparent when you have to like put this together and like execute it. Whereas like if
yeah.
you do a solo thing, like you know me, like one-on-one real-time games,
Mm-hmm.
you know, humble, not humble, sick brag. I've been number one in the world with 3 of them. I have to take care of everything myself, you
Right.
know. And then now, as you know, esports are trending to the 5-on-5 things where everybody like splits up the role, so it's more like you know a small startup.
Yeah.
And of course, poker is like it's an individual thing. Of course, you have your network, which is great for you know a sounding board. One of the things that you know you were mentioning, like you have a very strong network. As I get older, I realize when you're younger and you have a strong network, you can complain to each other, and it's
Sure.
you know as on your way up, it's okay. But then when you hit a certain age, maybe every you know your network's not really in that place. You know, people have careers, people have families, and you just can't do that anymore. And if you don't have that ability to vent in regarding the poker, you might as well just like you're done for too. Like
Yeah.
that venting has a lot to do with getting back in the zone, and that's something that's not discussed much either.
Yeah, I definitely would say that there's like a lot of poker players that are um, part of like a poker subculture community that maybe it may be on it's I mean it's both online and it's also sort of like a geographical thing, you know, like obviously like in Vegas there's something, different parts of Europe, different parts of America there's something, and I definitely do notice that there's I'm not really part of one of these. I have like a couple friends in them. I kind of have like my own thing. Some like guys who are online players, but everybody at this point is got 1 or 2 feet out of poker. Uh, but I definitely know that there's all these like poker communities sort of like around the globe that a lot of players are involved in it. And I definitely do feel like they gain, you know, the idea of having the community is like, you know, very beneficial, and it's like
Oh
an
yeah,
edge in many ways. Yeah, just it can be, poker can be a very lonely, selfish thing. So having friends to share with is it's very valuable. It's very helpful.
yeah. Sharing strategy, just like sounding board, calming down, you know, like hopefully, I mean, we know how it is in the poker. It's a lot like I think every industry, but the poker industry, because downward spiral so frequently, and it could be like your net worth can shift like a large percentage. It can be very emotionally draining, and then when like
Especially
one
if all you're doing all day, every day is poker.
yeah,
Like in the beginning, at least I was able to do that. And I didn't really have as many friends in the very, very beginning, like the first year. The second year, I started to make some friends. But I was so obsessed with playing as much poker. I thought it was like the coolest thing ever to play poker and win money and move up and stuff. Like I really thought it was like the best thing that had like ever been invented. Um, that I really didn't. Yeah, I could lose 30% of my net worth and then just like wake up the next day just hungry for more and not be sure I might be tilted or like affected, but like I don't know, I was just always hungry for more. It's like even though it's like bothering me, I was kind of able to the joy of playing more and getting to get back in there sort of would override the symptoms of being frustrated based on losing.
I had the PokerCraft with Chris Brewer, and he just mentioned too, yeah, when you're younger, you're encouraged to take more risks, and that's one of the things that when you get older, it gets tougher and tougher. But yeah, when like
I actually listened to that podcast, and that's actually, well, it depends how you frame it, but that could not be true. So it wasn't actually clear what he was trying to say, but let's say that let's take two people, a 20-year-old and a 40-year-old, and both of these people, let's say, have $10,000 in their savings, and they are trying to reach, let's say, I don't know, $500,000 by the time they are 60 for retirement. The 40-year-old is at such a disadvantage and let's say that it's like sort of like an all or nothing thing. The 40-year-old is actually encouraged to take a lot more risk because there's a lot less time, a lot less opportunity to compound interest. Whereas the 20-year-old is in a much better position to sort of be very, can just essentially rely on compound interest, doesn't need to take very many risks, and can, is likely to get there if you just sort of is slow and steady. That said, but like I said, it wasn't exactly clear. I guess the spot where you're more encouraged to take risks when you're young is that you do have a lot of time to figure. I think it was more so hopefully trying to assess what you wanted to do with the rest of your life, so you could waste 5 or even 10 years trying different things that may not be fruitful in the pursuit to find something that really would be a bit more of a good fit for you, one way or another.
Yeah, it's more of a collective thing in a sense that like I had Darren Elias on too, and he said that there aren't any top players like younger than 35. Or all the top players are younger than 35. So
Yeah.
for whatever reason, whether it's life responsibilities, becoming less tolerant for risk, then people just like naturally shift out of playing high stakes for poker for a living at least. So I think it was more addressing that. It's not universal because we know people who are older
Sure.
that still are in the mix, but more of just a
What's
observation.
interesting is that what I find is interesting. It's more like it's like an online poker generation versus like a not, or mostly online, or maybe like a younger generation. Because now there are guys that have been playing for 10 or 15 years
Yeah.
that are still at the top, and they don't. There's definitely a lot of advantages that the sub 25s have. But the disadvantage, like there's something to be said about being like a veteran, like like a true professional at something to kind of like, know, just know all the spots, know the good spots, know the weakness, know other people's weaknesses, know how to play like a long game type of thing.
Right.
And while all of like the really older generation of pros are basically gone or maybe relegated to smaller games, or maybe if they're very successful home games, most of them are pretty much gone. And then the guys that are still hanging around for the most part are of the poker boom generation, let's just say.
Yeah. Again, referring to the unreleased Brian Mycon episode, none of us recommend playing for a living nowadays. It's a lot harder than it was from the boom, and there's definitely less upside. Like there was just like so much freer money. The games were easier. It's not that the games can't be beaten. At the same time, like I'm sympathetic to like people who are coming up in this generation now. There just like aren't as many good options, and everything's just like getting tougher every day. Thanks to
Yeah,
Upswing Poker. I'm just kidding.
yeah, no, we definitely played our part. Yeah, it's tough. I would, but you know what's interesting? I would definitely say I've noticed like there's not as much talent, at least in North America and Western Europe, coming into poker as there was 5 and 10 years ago. It definitely feels like the like less of the what would be top poker talent are not as they're either stop because like we were talking about earlier where like they just games are tougher, their edge isn't as big, they bust their roll and they move on, or they just don't see it as good of an opportunity, and they stay in school or do whatever they're going to do that isn't poker. But I would say that definitely it doesn't seem like there's as much top talent coming in, and you sort of expect to see that at some point. And I kind of feel like it's happening now.
I think you're like early 30s, right?
32, yeah.
32. So one thing I tell my parents' generation is that something that Bill Gates and Steve Jobs did was always talk to people younger than you. So it's just why I love talking with, your generation, like the people around 30 and then the people around 20 to get their point of view. You had internet ever since you were a kid. So your absorption of raw information greatly exceeds my generation when I had it as a teenager. So it was already like great then, but we all knew like your generation would be the first one to be like, oh snap, whatever you want to look up, you get it. Or at least
Right.
some reference point.
Yeah.
Now the and it shows like when I watch like you guys, Joe Ingram, Dylan Weissman, you guys like adapt so fast. And it's just like I hate myself. I hate you guys. No, but I mean, it's just the thing. It's just like the internet era, and just like if you're used to adjusting, like you have a gaming background plus poker background and internet startup background, then you're just used to adjusting really quickly. So when I see people and talk to the kids in they're in the 20ish now, and Nick Stonington among one of them. I don't want to mention some other people. I see what they're going through. They're used to like a life of instant gratification. So they just like they move really fast, but something that your generation, my generation did better than them. And I don't know if this is just the nurture in their environment with instantaneous gratification stuff. It's like we actually like will sit ourselves down and like grind to like build something. Whereas like if they don't they want something because they probably see it's possible, and they just keep running their heads into a wall. And maybe it's a small sample size because I see the guys who are just try to jam it up really fast, and the slow and steady people maybe they need a little bit more time.
Yeah.
So it's possible that even when you were doing it, the cost of living was like a lot lower. So and the games were less rough. So I think that might be the environmental opportunity for talented people to ascend. Whereas like if you put that same talent in a tougher environment, it's harder to come up.
Yeah, less of them will make it through for sure.
But I do see really bright people like in their early 20s. I just see them like running their heads into the wall like far more than like your generation, my generation.
Giving up because they're not persistent is what you're saying.
No, they're still doing it. Just like okay, it's like I guess take Chris Brewer for example. Like the first time I played against him was like 3-4 years ago on Live at the Bike. We were playing 5-5, so he was on his way up, and I was just like coming back down to earth.
Yeah.
And the second I saw him, I was like, this guy's a young aspiring super or pro/super pro, and I did things accordingly. within a year or two, he's playing the biggest stakes in LA. We know how aggressive he had to be with his bankroll to even have a chance of doing that. Going from 5-5 to 100, 100, 200, with a 200 big blind Nancy.
Sure.
He is backed, but still, it's like, you know, he's...
Well, that's a big caveat. I was going to say, like, I feel like there's some action selling going on here somewhere.
Yeah, but even so, like, there's still, like, a growth period to get to the point where, you know, you're a competent player in those kind of stakes. We know how rough it is. You don't just, like, put money in front of somebody who is, like, a winning mid-stakes player and then...
Right. Yeah,
it's battle.
It is reasonably tough to do that effectively.
So that's just an observation, a very small sample size, because, you know, I'm in...
Wait, I don't understand what the observation is, that this guy moved up really quickly.
He was like... When I hear, like, your story, Doug's story, and a lot of people in your generation, it's starting online from micro stakes and then systematically going up. Obviously, in the US, we legally don't have that opportunity. So they have to, like, go through it, like, with live poker.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of variance, and you could, just like you said with the...
Well, I feel like the way that they're able to do that now is that there's so many, not only are there better, like, learning, like, I first got into poker. So one of the things we didn't talk about was when I first got into poker, I was like, what's, like, the manual of, like, how to, like, figure, like, what do I even, because it's in the very outset, there's so much information. It's such an infinitely hugely complex game.
Yeah.
Like, positions, 3-betting, like, it's just fucking, you can do anything, everything. This is why, like, if, you know, the machine learning needs these giant computers to, like, because they're running every possible you know, permutation, and in some sense, at least that's how I was approaching in the beginning. Like, I didn't know that, you know, necessarily how to value one thing over the other. So, like, my first 2 to 4 or 5 years was sort of like sussing all of that out. And I wrote a book called 2+2+ called My 5K Post, where essentially I got to the point where I figured I had a rough draft of a primer manual that was like, here's the last 2 years of my work as, like, an introduction to, like, fast track you to, like, getting a relatively okay framework to play poker. And I feel like a lot of these guys don't, either through process of osmosis of playing with, like, others and learning just simply by playing with them, or by whatever Upswing, Doug's YouTube channel, like, whatever, you know, they have, like, a lot of these. They're not doing as much of, like, the tinkering figure out. They're really good at, it's like, if they had a framework to work within, they could adapt it and then, like, adjust really quickly. Whereas it might take them a while to build the framework, but it takes them much less time to adapt to it. So it's unsurprising to me that, like, a lot of the guys that you do see that have sort of gone from nowhere to sort of somewhere, and now are quite good players. And not, like, I feel like a lot of times when that would happen back in the day is that a lot of those guys would end up going broke, because they just had some kind of aggressive style that allowed them to be in a good spot and run hot, and then they kind of hit the wall at some point, and then or were practicing. They either hit the wall strategically, meaning the players around them could understand what they were doing and shut them down, or they just were too cavalier with their bankroll and would just go broke. And the guys that are coming up now, that it's not just like a series of weird aggressive tricks, it's like actually like a fairly comprehensive game plan. It's unsurprising to me that they can get to a pretty proficient level and maintain themselves perpetually.
I mean, yeah, this goes through the conversation of no limit hold'em, or just hold'em in general, including limit hold'em, versus PLO and, you know, the mixed games. And if you were to start your poker career today, what would you do?
Well, the low and mid stakes, it depends what games you have available to you. The low and mid stakes no limit cash games on WSOP.com are actually still quite good. The cash games on ACR in no limit, I believe, are not so good. So it depends on what I would have access to. There still seems to be a bit of opportunity in PLO. Well, actually a fair bit, especially mid stakes cash games, and tournaments still seem to be. Tournaments are kind of the last frontier, honestly. Like once tournaments go, I feel like the whole thing's gone. But yeah, tournaments also seem pretty good. But I really don't like playing tournaments, so
I hate them too. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if there's a good answer. I feel like the one place you kind of don't want to go is to sit and goes. I don't know if those even exist anymore, really. But the problem is that they're really good for beginning players because all you're doing is like you're not doing much. You're just kind of like raising or shoving or calling a shove or something, and that stuff's all pretty easy to figure out. But it's not. So it's easy to get sort of like the skill cap, but then you don't move beyond that, and then you don't really learn anything for any of the other game disciplines. So, but I still feel like it's basically a matter of preference. If you don't mind the tourney grind, tournaments are probably your best bet because there's still a lot of edge. They're not hugely complicated. And there's still a lot of recreational action to be had. And there's like a couple days a week, especially weekends, that are really good. If you are like me, you're going to be more, I guess weighted towards cash games. And yeah, you can still have a big edge in no limit cash games. And it does feel like, especially at mid stakes, the guys aren't working quite hard enough. And if you like a really technical game, and when I say technical, I mean that like your position and the exact cards you have in your hand really matter. And you want to, it's sort of, PLO is sort of like the ultimate where your sort of trial phase, or like while you're like sussing out like what are acceptable ways to like play certain hands. There's the largest swamp, and then once you kind of get to the promised land, you're just cruising, and then everybody still in the swamp is just really fucked against you. So that's it's sort of nice in that way, and there's also more variance. I find it to be like a more fun game, but that can be appealing. But I think it's a combination of opportunity and interest are what should drive you. And I don't think there's a one set right answer. And I think you should go with try everything out, and then go with what interests you the most.
That's fair. I mean, clearly, you and I are both more interested in PLO, even though I'm far less proficient in the game. It's just like I have way too many hands of Hold'em, like limit and no limit, that like I just like I have a general framework for every situation. It may not be like the latest thing, but like really, and then PLO is so much more dynamic. But one of the things when I encourage people on broadcast, I'm like, there's more action than PLO. Like no limit Hold'em isn't necessarily the most profitable game in the room, and in fact,
it's also like, frankly, live it's fucking miserable, because it is, and sort of rightfully so. Like it is this sort of like every spot in no limit is basically the exact same. Like
yeah,
one player has the like way the best hand or a bluff, and then the other player has like a hand in between those. He loses to the bluffs and then beats the sort of middle strength hands. And then every once in a while he'll have like maybe have like a super even stronger hand than like the other guy's sort of best hands, and then he'll get a let out of line, and then then it's flipped again. Then that guy either has the best hand, but that's kind of like all over the place in very simple and pure ways in Hold'em. And PLO is just, like I said, it's more tech. Like the cards, the cards really matter. The equity is really close, and there's spots where you're always betting, always checking. You get to lead a lot. It's very, and like there's still like a lot of, let's say, there's not consensus on the way to play a number of situations in PLO. So somebody's got a better answer than, you know, other everybody else or whatever. So it's, in that sense, you can still sort of find an edge.
You don't need to show for Upswing, so I'm gonna do it for you. Like before the PLO courses came out for Upswing, I was like, definitely PLO is the way to go. And then you know, Chris Lehner and Dylan came first the Jay Nandez incident, then Dylan Weissman and Chris Lehner came in. Dylan commentated with me, and yeah, like I was jokingly fearful that everything I said was going to be outdated, which, you know, it wasn't. It's just that stuff is, you know, more advanced. So after Dylan and the Upswing course introduces this stuff, it's just like, it's just a matter of time for the people who, you know, spend the time. And if a lot
Although
of people,
I yes, you are right, but my sense from being both on the side of selling the course and on one side, on the other side playing in the games, my sense is that players are not working hard enough. That they're especially for some of the guys that I play with, like the really high stakes, it's like kind of clear to me that they're not like, given the amount of money they're playing for, they really should be working harder. And it's yeah, it's quite sad that they're not, but I mean, it's good for me and whoever does want to put in the work.
I remember you mentioned this on your stream, like, you know, when you and Dylan stream, and some of my other buddies, I tend to jump in. It's just like, you know, hang out and listening to you guys. But you guys know this scenario far more than I do, so I'm just like, I just ask people I know, and just to kind of direct the audience, because they ask me, and I'm kind of like a lot of people, you shouldn't play poker but for a living in this era, but like, if you're absolutely determined, like, what are we supposed to tell them? Because right now, like, we're veterans in the game, and they're reliant on people like us to just like at least help them in the right direction, other than just
I'm not
like,
as gung ho to tell somebody that they shouldn't play poker. I mean, like, so the way I sort of always thought about this is that if you know, if you've thought or think that that you should play poker for a living, I tend to think that you should, and the reason is because on some level there's a desire or an unresolved question or an unsatisfied need in some way, and it's not like, I don't necessarily look at it as a purely financial endeavor. You know, I think that, you know, like a lot of people will, because poker isn't just, you know, you clock in, you make some amount of money, you know, you clock out. It's a lot of like, it's a lot of struggle with yourself. It's like kind of like you put yourself into this system, and you want to kind of test yourself against it to see, you know, if you can do it. It's almost like,
yeah.
I don't know, chess or any like competitive, anything that's competitive. You know, you're essentially testing yourself against the zeitgeist of competition which exists in, you know, the system which you compete. And so, you know, in some sense, yes, it's like a money making endeavor. And another, you know, in another sense, it's again this like highly competitive thing that you're getting to, which can be an outlet for you. So yeah, I don't know, like if you feel like you need to play poker and only, the other thing is that, you know, it's like even the definition of like a professional poker player is like someone who's like really rigid, that, you know, again, like plays it, you know, purely for money. I mean, you could only do poker, have it be your source of income, and then not be necessarily so sort of professional about it. Like it could be this like sort of like only source of income for you, but your sort of first and foremost goal could be the chase of the whole thing. And that can be rewarding and illuminating, or, you know, like whatever, like maybe it could also be like sort of like a phase, or that, you know, especially if you're younger, like, you have all this like energy, this raw energy that you like need to get out, and then you do it for a couple of years, and then you kind of like you had your thrills, and then you're ready to get back to business. And should you have not, in some sense, I feel like for a lot of these people, it could be like a regret. Like then they sort of choose not to do it, and then something they sort of wish they'd always had done. So I'm not, do I? It's as a professional poker, like if the only way you can really make money is if you feel like you can have like an angle that isn't just showing up playing in public games and being a really good player. Like the dream of that to then make a lot of money is really tough. Like, and in fact, the only way you really could do that is to play tournaments, and gamble and kind of run good. And plays big live tournaments and stuff. Yeah, I guess that's where I would agree, but I don't necessarily think that as a professional or full-time player that's all the game really has to offer.
So there's a concept about using poker as a mechanism to explore yourself. So you're kind of touching up on some of that.
Sure.
What do you think the predominant parts are?
Because one other thing about that, I mean, like I'm sure I think we both know like billionaires that play poker, right? Like,
yeah.
And it's like, let's put it this way. It's not a leisure activity. I've seen billionaires lose their fucking minds at the table, right? So they're all,
What's your opinion on their drive? Because I have a little bit of insight on their psychology.
In my sense is that it's not necessarily one thing. Like I've seen guys that just want to test themselves against the pros. I've seen guys that just want to blow off some steam. I've seen guys that like just have a lot of money, want to throw it around just to try to like, they're okay to like lose it, but like they kind of want to just like bad beat a pro or somebody, just like fuck with them because they have so much money and they just want to see them squirm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen like all kinds of stuff.
That's like, yeah. And what you said is all correct. And to me, this is what I've seen from the billionaires that I've dealt with in poker, and obviously multimillionaires. They have a dollar amount where material goods are just too boring for them. And they need something to they need to be able to feel something, whether it's like poker or a pit game. And then that's where they enter this arena where their dollar amount that they choose can allow them to feel something again. Mm-hmm. Whereas like in their profession, they are who they are. They reached, whatever their threshold is, and either they think inaction or, not being as aggressive in that sector is as rewarding, or maybe causes more risk than is necessary for whatever they're doing. And they just choose this arena as one of their outlets. So I think that's an underrated thing. Like, and this goes for the casino industry as a whole, because, especially back in the day, even 10, especially 20 years ago, like the casino industry gets a bad rap, but the whole thing is this industry was built off people with expendable income. So
yeah,
these people with an excess of money who are not putting it into material goods, like luxury material goods, like sports cars, jewelry, whatever, they bring it back into they put this into an environment that gives it back to, other people, in which if this outlet doesn't exist, they're locking it up.
By the way, while we're on the topic of billionaires, I saw one of the questions somebody wanted me to answer was Garrett stories, and I could only think of two, but one of them involved a billionaire, so I figure it's a good time to break into some Garrett stories.
Sure.
So I, several years ago, and by the way, this is back when Garrett's used to just show up to like 10-20, no limit the commerce, like every night, buy in for like, I don't know, 50 or 100K, when like everyone had like 5K at most in front of them, and just like play like a fucking maniac. And when he first started playing live with the bike, he was kind of like up to his old tricks. Then he got burned a couple times. And it seems as though, from what I've seen, he's improved his game quite a bit since then, which is sort of like a testament to what I was saying, is that, you sort of will, if you're a smart player, you'll adjust to your environment and sort of play up to that level. And it seems like he's definitely improved his game quite a bit since his first appearance. But this is years before even that. And he's a wild, man. So this is a 5,100 no limit game, and I hadn't really been playing that much live poker. So I'm not 100% sure kind of who everybody is, but I imagine, 1020 sort of is for the most part the biggest no limit game that runs in Commerce. So this is like a much bigger game for most players. And it's like me, Garrett, maybe one other person that's sort of comfortable with these stakes, and then everyone else is kind of taking a shot. There's a billionaire character, there's an entertainment billionaire character in the game, famous guy, and then like two other Rex, and then like some shot taking players, me and Garrett. Anyway, shot taking guy sits down with like, I don't know, 12 or 15K, opens to 300 from early position. Garrett 3-bets from like early mid, so it's 300 to 1,000. Billionaire character calls from like mid. I'm just like, holy shit, what the fuck is going on in this hand? Like, already. Other guy calls, there's 3K in the pot. Flop is 7-5-5. Check. Garrett bets 2K into 3K. Billionaire character raises to 7. I'm like, yo, what the fuck? The shot taking guy folds. Garrett 3-bets to like 20K. I'm just like, you got to be fucking like, what? But I'm just like, at this time, like, A, what the fuck? B, I'm like, please God, let this get the showdown. Like, I need to know like what anybody has in this hand. Anyway, 3-bets to 20K. Guy calls, and honestly, so at the time, and props to Garrett. At the time, I thought it was like completely plausible that Garrett could be completely full of shit on the flop. I didn't know him that well. In retrospect, without giving up too much, I actually don't think that he would ever 3-bet the flop without a hand. But at the time, I'm just like, I don't know, this dude has like really big muscles. He's like talking really loud at the table. He's got a lot of fucking money in front of him. Like, I guess anything is possible. So anyway, guy calls, or a billionaire character calls. And I'll say one other thing. I come to find out billionaire character is like a huge Garrett fanboy. Like, it's really fucking like weird. Billionaire character loves Garrett. Wants him to be his son for sure. Anyway, turns in 8. Garrett puts in the last 30K or whatever. I mean, Garrett had more than this guy. Garrett had like 150K. This guy had like, I think 50. Garrett puts in the last 30. Did the guy snap call? I don't think so. I think he thought for like a little while. Not too long though. He calls. River's a 9. I'm like, God, I hope somebody has a fucking 6. I'd die. And I never get to see what the billionaire character had because Garrett tabled the Jack 5 suited for trips, and that was good. So I was just like, what the fuck, dude? So yeah, that was a hell of an experience. And then I think then actually the guy rebought and we played for a little while. I don't know. Garrett stacked some other poor unsuspecting bum hunters and then called it a day. And then I have another Garrett story. I don't know how well I'll be able to retell as well. I'll do my best. So it was the same game, but like a couple months later or something. And we are playing 5,100. And I have 20K. Garrett has, I don't know, 5 million. So Garrett raises like the cutoff middle position, and I call on the button with King 5 suited. I call on the big blind with King 5 suited. Flop is 6-5-5. Garrett bets. I flop trips, pretty good kicker. Garrett bets. I check raise. Garrett 3-bets. I'm like, holy fuck. I call. Turns a king. Bingo. I check. Garrett bets. I call. River's like a 2. I check. Garrett shoves. I call. King 5 is good. Garrett just mucks. So I'm like, all right, nice. So I just stack Garrett for 20K. Then this hand happens. Did Garrett? No. Okay. So then nothing had happened really much. This is like earlier on in the game too. So then this hand happens. I shottled a 200 this time. I don't know if everyone was shattling or just me and him, but I shottled a 200. He opens. I have ace jack of hearts in the big blind. I threw this 200, whatever. Makes it 600. I make it 2200. He calls. 932 rainbow. Bet, call. Turn queen of hearts. Backdoor flush draw. Bet, call. River king of hearts. Backdoor the flush. I check. Garrett shoves. I call, and he's just like, I mean, I'm the nuts. So anyway, I stack Garrett again, this time for 40K because so now I've quadrupled up. And did I have any other hands this day? I can't remember. I think I actually won a couple other pots from other players, but Garrett goes on to like run the worst I've maybe ever seen anybody run like in live, but like he's just getting stacked by like fish, bum hunters, just like every like which way. And he's got trips and the guy's got a boat. He's got kings and the guy's got ace, king, and flop snakes. Like like the poor guy, like he even I think he even started betting on basketball or something. He started losing like the March Madness on. He started losing those. I think he lost I don't know 130 or like 170K, and it was like every pot Garrett was involved in, and he just lost every pot min 10K for a good 4 or 5 hours. And it was like, it was kind of amazing. Like I had never seen him get, I don't know if I've seen very many players get like that beaten down just by like bad luck and aggressive play. And it was still like early. Like we started playing at 10 or noon, and you know, at like 4, Garrett started drinking Coronas, got stacked once more, and then it was like, I'll take one more Corona for the road. And it's like, all right, boys, it was a pleasure, and was on his way. So
sounds like him.
That's how it goes sometimes. Yeah.
My experiences were like way before, like we were playing 10-20, but he would buy in for like 20 or 30. But you know, it was a different era, like 10 in between 10-15 years ago. And just like, this is his and my generation, Andy and Jay Rosencrantz, blah, blah. We're the style, just like, if you can overrun the table, any 2 cards, I'm sure you know this, like we will try to do it.
Sure.
So, like, I think your generation is more like solid, I would say.
Yeah, I would say we would try to be. We wouldn't be that. My generation would work within a frame. We wouldn't be this. It's this weird, like I'm like a table like bullet, like this or that. Like there's none of that. Like even fact, like the social dynamic of how players feel and it affects their play just never. It's not even obvious for us to like necessarily see online, and we definitely don't like, you know, it's just a different environment, so we don't adopt those sort of principles. So yeah.
Well, I mean, all of us have an online and live background. I mean, me and you know Garrett, Jay, blah blah, and just like I think a lot of, at least for me, and I think Jay Rosencrantz adopted that style from online. When you're always 3-betting, or when you're 3-betting one of the in position, one of the things you notice is, does this guy always fold or does this guy always call, or you know, frequently, and then you just kind of go from there. If the guy always folds, you know, in both scenarios, like you could start 3-betting with garbage, and if you could stack them, you just keep running him over. And then we adopted that to the live, especially after Black Friday. I think, you know, Garrett is like the alpha when it comes to this kind of style. He just like don't give a fuck.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about Garrett, is that most of the time there's almost like a reciprocal sort of relationship where like it's like if you look like that, then you aren't. It's almost like a front to think that you won't run that many big bluffs and calls. But like if you've seen the Live of the Bike YouTube channel, that's like literally Garrett's whole game. He's just like, I'll just bluff it off, I'll call it off, like whatever. And he does, and you know he will. And it's a little daunting, just for me, because like I still, and actually another thing we sort of talked is that Garrett and I played for like a couple years before we started playing on Live of the Bike. So then all of a sudden we started playing these big pops Live of the Bike. But this has been going on before that in like other games where even if somebody is willing to call too much, like I don't really stop bluffing. I maybe try to prune them back a bit, but like I just, you know, that's just how I adjust. So then, yeah, you end up sort of seeing some kind of wild hands between The two of us alive with a bike, and it's like, especially, I mean, the one hand that everybody sort of talks about is the king's hand versus him.
Versus
and
eights, yeah.
Like how, how could that hand happen? It's like, you guys you're seeing like you don't know the context of the fucking lunacy between like the two of us with like bluffing and calling and like it, this is just like, I mean, that I feel like that hand was like particularly out of line from him. But it's not out of character for either of us, I would say. And like, I could have easily had fucking ace 5 or king jack or whatever, and then just he looks like a genius.
Off. Yeah.
So yeah, it's
I know it's like 10-9 or something like that, or
sure.
It was like 10-9 high or something. All right.
Yeah. 10-9 2-3 7 or something.
Something, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the audience loves this stuff, and yeah, I mean, it's rough, man. And like, do you have any comments on the high stakes scene now? Like, I hear you're kind of blocked from games.
High stakes live?
Or just anything, live, online, everything.
Well, live is pretty dead. You get the occasional game in Vegas and LA, but it's not. It used to be a bonanza. Now it's really not. A lot of the most exciting stuff has all sort of gone private, or they're on these apps now. So I don't know. It seems like if you kind of want to play high stakes poker, you kind of got to get into that whole world. I know about some games that have gone on out here in Vegas during quarantine, and it's just, there's a lot of like hugely degenerate debauchery. Like, it's just like, I don't really want to talk about it, but like, there's just, my God, the degeneracy that's gone on in some random houses in Vegas during this quarantine is just been completely out of hand.
Is it like what Dan Bilzerian claims he did?
Not as like much money, but like just like drugs, women, and like just absurd amounts of gambling. Where you'll see somebody who played in the game, and he'll post on Twitter like, "Hey, looking for like $1 million in Bitcoin, or looking to sell $1 million in Bitcoin or something," and it's like, you kind of know exactly where that tweet's coming from. So yeah, it's
subtext.
Yeah, there's some chaos going on out here. Online, it was really good when COVID started, but has really slowed down. You sort of, and WSOP was really good. When I first got back to Vegas from quarantine, was sort of just started, then it kind of slowed down, and then it was decent during the WSOP, but is for the most part pretty slow. But you gotta like, there's like one or two like wild cards, but for the most part, it's just kind of like regs, just essentially seeing who's where in the sort of hierarchy. And also, for those of you who do play on WSOPs, WSOP legend MJ Perry, aka Urban Magic, won something like 200K in like one of the last WSOPs, and he just like loves to battle at high stakes, and he's got a lot of money in his account now. So you'll often see. I know he's been battling Bad Bunny. There's a new player named Bad Bunny at No Limit, and doesn't look like it's been going his way so far. But I haven't really been keeping that too close tabs on it. But yeah.
Speaking of WSOP.com, let's move on to the subject of one of your good buddies versus, a very, very famous poker player icon.
Yeah.
This famous icon, aka Daniel Negreanu, said a little toxic stuff on the stream.
Yeah, I don't. So the genesis of this is that Doug and Daniel have been at each other for years now, and Doug just can't help himself at a good Daniel needle, and and Negreanu just takes the bait every time. So, and this is, I never, and so anyway, so Doug was like, if this gets like tweets, like if this gets 1,000 retweets, I'll challenge Daniel. And then like,
I
obviously,
retweeted.
yeah, of course. In 20 minutes, got 1,000 retweets and then challenged Negreanu. And then in the craziest turn of events, he accepted several days ago, but then there hasn't been any follow up. So I don't know.
They
Yeah,
said
I
they
don't
were going
know.
to do it in a couple months, though, right? It wasn't like right away,
I don't
to my
know.
knowledge.
Honestly,
At least it's on the table, you know? I mean,
PokerShares has got a market for it. Yeah, it's out there.
so it's really interesting because, you know, since this year, since the quarantine, we had Phil Galfond versus Vinny VD. We had Antonio Svendiari versus Phil Hellmuth, and now Daniel Negreanu
Versus Daniel Negreanu.
Doug
Yeah, I mean,
Above.
honestly, like, are you not entertained? You
I
know,
am. I am.
like,
Like,
you guys are fucking entertained. Like, thank God for Doug Polk. Like,
I
he's making poker fun again.
you know, obviously he got snubbed for
Also, I will say one other thing as well. Like, so a lot of people are a lot of I don't know how these threads get derailed into like people make it about their narrative, but or they just don't like Doug, whatever it is. But definitely one thing that was talked about a lot when this was going on was that you know, Negreanu's done a lot to grow poker, or more than this or that, or it's good for poker, whatever. And it's absolutely true. However, since Doug, you know, burst onto the YouTube scene, Doug has done infinitely more to grow. It's like not even close. Grow poker in the last couple of years than Negreanu. So, you know, for all the on the one side, sort of helping the ecosystem, on the other side, giving everybody a lot to think and talk about. You know, Doug's done a really amazing job.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Doug mentioned too, he got snubbed from awards. My view, even though, you know, it's just me out of a sea of like people playing poker in the poker industry, it's like what was cool about what Doug did is like a lot of his issues, he brought a lot of the 2+2 forum topics to life, to, you know, in video form, in which a lot of these things would be lost. And
Sure.
I definitely, there's a large percentage of me who agrees with what he says. You know, his delivery and mine are definitely different, very different. But I think bringing those topics in the spotlight, if Doug didn't do them, they would just be buried in a forum that and just
Yeah.
never see the light of day.
Yeah, he definitely got some movement on some things, and then, you know, some things that would have otherwise been sort of swept under the rug. He did a very good job of bringing a lot of attention to, and made certain behavior a lot more costly. So yeah, shout out to him for doing that.
Shout out to him. And there's oftentimes a complaint that I hear about both of our companies for ruining poker and putting too much information out there.
Yeah.
I don't know how they could even compare Live at the Bike to Upswing when it comes to ruining the environment. But you have any comments on that?
I mean, I don't know. It was like destined to happen. I'm sure Upswing has. Look, I don't think It's like Upswing has really empowered a number of individuals that really that sort of like needed like an outlet, and really, you know, really got them sort of like engaged to sort of go after it. But I feel like a lot of the complaints are coming from like people that are looking for something to scapegoat their losses on, or who aren't really working hard enough. Like, I'm sure we've had some material impact, but, you know, I think generally, like, on, you know, we've helped certain individuals, and I think on an individual level, if, you know, that you're having trouble succeeding, I think that there's, you know, you contribute that more to either just the general direction of poker, or to, you know, things which are completely in your control. I don't think that I think we've done a really terrific job. I'm very, very proud of the work that we've done, but I don't think that we are the single-handed force that's, you know, taking this like money flying out of the computer sort of ecosystem, and then all of a sudden, you know, turning off the spigot. I don't think that's really true.
Like you said, there's a lot of scapegoating, but there's two things that they never mention is that um, obviously not just Upswing and Live at the Bike, a lot of other companies help bring people into poker because they need to learn things or else they're not going to play after they get skinned. One of the processes or poker and games in general is that once you learn something new, you think you're the shit or you think you're going to do better. And you have to just, then you keep running back in the situation. If you don't give them information, they're just going to quit.
Yeah. The other thing is, yeah, we do really do a lot of, we make it, I feel like we do a really good job of exporting our view and our outlook on definitely strategy, but like a lot of things in poker through Upswing to, yeah, give you a better sort of like view, like insider sort of like look on things. And the reason I think that's valuable is because our audience is incredibly casual. We obviously have like top notch everything, and we have like a lot of like elite players. But and from the perspective of business, we've done a very remarkable job at really being able to appeal to a very wide variety of players. And yeah, like you're saying, like a lot of guys that might not, that might be good for your game, sort of like in one way or another, good for the health of poker one way or another. By just like a little bit of knowledge, and then this 3-betting, c-betting thing work, or whatever they've been able to discover. And yeah, just makes there be a little bit more liquidity in the player pools.
So there's a topic that's not discussed much in the poker world. Actually, I haven't heard many people talk about it, and I wanted to save this question for you in particular. Skill cap. Human beings have a natural skill cap. We've seen a lot of players. I'm almost gonna hit year 20. Even if they get premium material like the Upswing courses, everybody has a skill cap. How do you think that applies to, like, first of all, I'm sure you could think of like 5 to 10 players you think are just have an incredibly high skill cap.
Sure.
And there's like a slew of pros, like hundreds of them. How does that apply, like when they're given like strong to premium material and then apply to their execution, how they wind up?
I would say this whole area of inquiry is entirely unintuitive, in the sense that Doug and I have like lived with and coached different players that have had a lot of success and players that have had no success, despite like one-on-one, like a lot of one-on-one sort of like dedicated coaching. So my opinion is a lot of the guys that find Upswing, that's kind of the missing link for them, that go on to like a lot of success, I feel like they tend to underrate their role in the whole process. There is a certain amount of, I can lead you to water that you kind of have to drink. And I feel like a lot of the guys that are successful underrate their ability to drink. I would also say that there's a lot of ways to be successful. Like, yeah, you can be, like a lot of the really talented poker players then suffer from bankroll issues, tilt issues, whatever. That, it's a very complex model to see, at the end of the day, at the end of the year, who ends up having, like, how much money do you actually make, right? Now, the guys you see at high stakes, for the most part, are all going to have some sort of gift for the game. But even there's like some players that are maxing out on, it's like if you're like a Diablo 2 character, there's like some players that are maxing out on like sort of like having a gift, and there's like other players that like, definitely aren't as talented, but like don't ever tilt, never mess with their bankroll, always fucking go to the gym or whatever, and then they're just like solid, and it's almost like Jason Kuhn on one hand and like Jungle like on the other. Where like Jason's just like a solid dude and like a super solid player, and like, is a veteran and really like worked on his game. It's not that you don't ever expect him to make like great reads, but like you don't expect him to have like a crazy high game sense like Jungle, who's like has some of, if not like the highest game sense of anyone ever, and will play like all kinds of like ridiculous hands and kind of make it up on the fly. Whereas like you expect Jason to really have a lot of things worked out ahead of time. And so, yeah, so there's so many different ways, kind of like to to approach it. The other and even within that, it's like then Jungle can kind of play. Jungle's weird, man. Like he's very interesting. Like Jungle could sort of play anybody and kind of beat anybody and maybe beat them at their own game, or like Jungle could play or be tilting, and then even when he's tilting and clearly doing like Jungle could start playing bad, but then see you respond to him playing bad, and then just get one level above you.
Yeah.
And that's like a whole world that Jakun would just never open that Pandora's box in that way. He would just show up, make sure his ranges are as sensible and smart and balanced as they can be, and get in good games and play well. And that's sort of like one way to do it. So there's like this, but then there's like all different like kind of like tiers of this. So like, raw skill caps definitely, part of like here's the other thing. A lot of really talented players, I would include myself in this, like I can only really play my A game for so long and I kind of burn out. So it's like, how much justice am I really like? It's like if I play my A game, then my B game, then my C game, and I average at my B game, it's like how much am I really capitalizing on the ability to be like a level above everybody? So anyway, yeah, it's like a complex problem, and then there's some players that really go through the material like even like learning an upswing. Like some players go through the material very meticulously, very repetitive, remember kind of like each piece. Some people just want to get the ideas and like your outlook, and then like they're like, yeah, and then they kind of revisit, or it changes their frame or outlook. They're thinking about things differently. They just want some good ideas to bounce off of, and so there's it's a really diverse world out there, and you really kind of want to think about like where are you coming at this from, what works for you, how do you work, and then try to get as much, play up to your strengths, really. Play up to your strengths,
Yeah.
And appreciate the differences that you have, and how after a year of like diligent focused play, how do you end up with the most money, and then just max out on those sorts of behaviors.
Right, which is one topic about like what do you do when you play for a living, because like especially after the boom, no limit hold'em was clearly the way to go. And then somewhere along the lines, people branched off to PLO and mixed games. In LA, limit hold'em is, in my opinion, slightly stronger of a choice than no limit. So, shout out to Garrett and Andy and other no limit hold'em purists for only doing that. It's crazy, but like, you branched
for like as long as like they have. I mean, Garrett's been playing no limit hold'em for like 15 years or something fucking crazy.
A little bit more than that, yeah.
Yeah, it's insane.
So yeah, it's just like the other games, depending on the timing, is like your win rate, can potentially, definitely on average, be higher, especially with no limit game conditions. The second those game conditions turn to tight, like with the normal small blind, big blind ante structure, it just like nothing's gonna happen.
Yeah.
So, do you have any opinion like just branching out
to play other games?
Yeah, versus staying.
I do. I mean, one thing I've always thought about no limit players is that they need to be able to learn to play PLO, because there's often times where like the PLO is the biggest and by far the best game in the room. Yeah. And it's like that's like one thing that like no limit players could. It's like, again, thinking about it from the course of a year, it's like if you took 3 to 6 months, focused a fair amount of time on PLO, bought an Upswing course, played a bunch online, figured it all out. Oh, which by the way, we can ask. That was another question. It would be really valuable. So the question was posed on Twitter was how long did I spend in the lab before getting good?
Yeah.
The answer is basically I played like 20,000 hands. I think like Zoom, Zone, whatever poker is like the best way to like learn the game, because it's so easy to focus on these like 4 tables and just get a lot of hands in a short amount of time. So this is how I learned. I played 20,000 hands of Zoom 1-2, and I played super loose, super aggro. I just was getting it in with kings and ace-x and whatever. And I was trying to essentially figure out how far could I take it? Like what were relative hand strengths and absolute hand strengths in like all these different positions to like find out kind of where the limits were. And I paid a lot of rig, and I ended up losing at 1-2. But then I moved up to 2-5. And then immediately started winning and had like a pretty healthy win rate at 2-5, because like I had gotten to the point after like 20,000 hands in 1-2, I was like, okay, I get it. I'm ready to move up. And by the way, at this time, like I was beating like 50, 100, 100, 200 no limit. So like this was like a pure learning experience at like 1-2, putting us 20,000 hands, and I loved doing it, had a great time. So then, yeah, moved to 2-5 and then felt pretty confident and then immediately started winning. Won, I don't know, 10K there. And it was like, I'm ready for 5, 10, 10, 20, hopped into those games and yeah, just kept winning. And then it wasn't, and then I sort of hit the wall at 25-50. 25-50, I was like, these guys are really,
really good.
Same at No Limit. Like these guys have been doing this for years. Like all the best and the best play this. Like, this, I'm going to have to do something. I'm going to have to do something else to sort of get myself to excel at this. And that was about the time when mercury poisoning was sort of kicking in. So I kind of took time off from poker. So it wasn't until years later, I guess the solver came out and then I was sort of revisiting, the PLO lab, so to speak.
And I jump in your stream
some. Going back to the no limit point, is that like, so like, let's say that you're like a no limit player. Let's say that, like I have a friend that plays no limit, and then he's like, yeah, most of the time my hourly is like 100 or 200, but then every once in a while it's 1,000 because like the game is just like, this like one whale, it's amazing, right? Yep. It's kind of like that with games in like PLO. It's like you'll play in these like hold'em games, and like oftentimes it'll be good, but sometimes you'll have like a $500 an hour PLO game, and like you're playing in this like $100 an hour like no limit game, and like that if you were just competent enough to be able to hop in that PLO, like you'd be set, and maybe it only accounts for 20-30% of the amount of poker that you play, but it's because you're only sort of like clocking into the biggest best games, and otherwise you're sort of chilling no limit. So yeah, and it's strategically very interesting. It's sort of simple. Like limit drives me crazy because there's like no bluffing, whereas like the whole
that's definitely not true. It's just very different. Like the bluffing styles are very different. All the games have bluffing.
Yeah, but like you can't, if you're getting like 6-1, how much can you bluff?
You beat.
Not that much.
No, I mean, you just have to pick the spots. Like, I don't know. I mean,
right, but like basically every hand in like in a big bet game is like you're on the edge.
Yes,
like every hand is on
that. I agree with, but I just like the fixed limit games. Like I'm split 50-50 both ways, and Dan is far more in the fixed structure when he obviously plays big bet games. Dan Zach plays big bet games too. The thing about the fixed limit structures is like you could be getting 7-1, but when like the bad card like comes, like you're technically supposed to fold, or if a certain range, whatever. If it's like one of the examples I had was like I had pocket eights and it was a jack high flop. I got check raised, I called, and it came queen ace, and I just fired with my eights, and then I got a jack to fold.
Sure.
Like it's just they're different. That's all, because big bet games you're used to like bigger bets and getting people to fold equity, or blowing people off their hand, and that's like the premise.
It's very sort of like
they're just very different.
Like one like mistake, or like you can really capitalize and like make them pound on it.
It's far more polarized in the big bet games, whereas the fixed limit structures, it's more like, can you get them in a situation where even if they're getting 6-1, 12-1 in this call, you can fire and they just like have to torch it? Because the higher stakes games, especially the fixed limit games, is you got to make folds too. Right. Like, because the default is to call because you're getting such good odds. So you have to sneak in folds here and there. And then if you could just like, level your opponent, then you can get the upper hand. Like I have blown a lot of competent players off, their hand, and they're getting insane odds. But anyway, there's a tangent. Like I don't even think this is that interesting to the public. I'd rather.
Anyway, point being is that like it's not. If you like No Limit, there's a good chance that you'll like PLO.
Yeah, I agree.
Basically. Again, it's just the thing that keeps most people out is that transition period. It's going to last quite some time, where like you just don't like. There's so many, and it's especially sort of sick in PLO where like oftentimes you're committing your whole stack. It's with like it's different. It's like one pair spot in like a 3-bet pot, or like a bad 2-pair, or weird straight draw, or bad flush draw, like. And it's like, you're like, is this a hand to bet call it off? Do I shove over a bet? Do like, Do I have to hero call? Like, you know, it's all these spots that come up in PLO that are obvious once you're on the other side of that swamp. But in the beginning, it's maybe not so obvious. And yeah, you're gonna get it all in and have 30% and be like, God, fucking 30 motherfuckers, aces. Oh, fuck, they always have aces. Such bullshit. Like that's gonna happen a lot as you're sort of working a lot, and that's essentially what I kind of understood that was gonna happen, which is why I played 1-2 to get that out of the way, because it wasn't like it wasn't so much like these players, like the good players are going to play so much. It was more just like the technical aspect of like, what the fuck is this hand even like? How often are they going to have ace? Or like, can I, you know, get it in certain hands here or there? You really got to work all that out, and it's just time. Not anybody can do it. If you're good enough to beat, you know, the limit, you could probably do it. It's just going to be investment and patience.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of work to be done, but I think the games are easier, especially since like in No Limit, people see so much televised poker in the last 15 years. Like even losing players aren't as bad, you know, aren't that bad compared to back then. But like watching your stream, and I never get to ask you this, but it's a joke. So you obviously have, you know, play against like Omaha for rolls, Lesnick, blah blah blah. Like, how is your relationship with these people? Because you're such a character when you're on the Twitch stream when dealing with these guys.
Me and Omaha for rolls, I think, are cool. I like asked him if I could come party with him in Hungary right as like COVID was starting, and I was like, oh yeah, maybe I'll come after COVID ends. He's like, you come anyway. We party. Do not care. We drink. I'm like, all right, nice, bro. So me and him are good. Oh, then like we played a bunch, and like I kind of got the best of him for like a little while. So I don't know. He like might be a little butthurt at me, but I think that's probably more of a fleeting thing with him. I think we're probably cool. I think if I went to Budapest, like we would chill. And I hope to do that one day because he's definitely a wild motherfucker, and I think it'd be cool to go drinking with him. Blesnick, I called him a fish on my stream when he was multi-accounting, and he took it personal. So then he like tried to like play me heads up on like a couple different accounts. I played with him recently on Wsop, and he played like about as bad as like anybody could. But in classic Blesnick style, you just like call 5 bets and then just like flop flushes. So he got the upper hand of me then, but I haven't played with him much since. He's kind of a weird dude. He like after we played some, he like hit me up. He was like, "Hey, I got like an interesting business proposition for you," or something like that. And I was like, "Ooh, sounds dangerous." And
as if you didn't have enough work on your plate with 2 businesses.
I mean, also like he hasn't like cheated like everybody ever. So I was like, even giving this dude my number, like I wonder if you can like hack me or something.
Yeah, this is a screwed up world right now.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I think it's it's pretty good. I hope to a couple of the guys have hit me up and like they enjoy my videos. And that's been quite with me to make more, but just haven't really had enough guts to do so. But you know what's interesting? I've always wanted to do this. I always wanted to do this, and I'm sad that I didn't. Do you ever remember that picture of like all the scientists right after the war? They're all like wearing black. It's like black and white photo. There's like Heisenberg and Einstein and everybody, and they're all like all the physicists and whatever.
I know of it. I can't like picture it in my head. Yeah.
Whatever. Anyway, like I always kind of wanted to do something like that with poker. Like it would have been really cool for me to get like all of the 25, 50 plus whatever regs in like a room like at the World Series or somewhere to just get like a photo of everybody like year over year to kind of like see like who was still around, like what they're up to. I thought that would be
I mean, I had I don't have many followers on Twitter, so I posted some stuff that was like interesting, or just like I want to know win rates per year. Like this is really, really hard to document, but like what were the top win rates in 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7, and just like how it evolved over time? Because a lot of people, and Doug's one of them, like constantly say poker's dying, and they show the interest of poker, sloping down, but not dead. So, but it's just like it's too hard and it's almost too late. But if there's like an attempt to be like, okay, these were the top win rates and net wins of like every year for the ones you could document. Like, online is obviously a lot easier. I think that, and like your idea, just
Yeah, it would be good. The only you'd have to be like a couple things, because I think there's still some players with good win rates or big win rates. But the thing is, you would have to juxtapose it against number of hands.
right.
Because especially at like higher stakes, like the game will only go if it's good. So you can still have a big win rate, but you're just not going to play nearly as many hands. But
Yeah.
it would be obviously very, very interesting to see.
It was just it's one of the metrics that obviously in poker, say Hendon mob, some of the metrics are really skewed.
So yeah, that's for sure.
So you are one of Doug's closest friends. What do you think? Or I'm sure you probably even know this. Like, how did this rivalry with Daniel Negreanu start, and why does it keep going?
How did it start? I mean, the more rake is better thing, I feel like was definitely a seminal moment. I don't think Doug was like a particularly big fan of Negreanu prior to this. I know that prior to the whole thing, I know that I wasn't. I just don't like him. Like, just rubs me the wrong way. Like, I just think he sucks. Like, I guess that's it. Like, I just think he sucks.
As a poker player?
No, as like a person.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, so anyway, that's I don't know how much of that, I don't want to speak for Doug. I don't know how much of that's true for him. It's true for me. So yeah, I suppose like there was kind of like a bit of that. I don't know, man. He's just like, he's also just always on some like fucking bullshit about something. And yeah, and then sort of like the more rake is better thing, and then he like doubled down with like fuck the pros, and I don't know, he's just kind of whack. So I feel like he's just kind of like a good punching bag, and frankly deserves it. And Doug could kind of like what's awesome about Doug is that all these guys, like there was no like Cape Crusader, there was like no one like the fucking Torelli, like if there was no Doug, like Torelli would still be gallivanting around like like but like because there's a Doug, he's like, wait, I'm sorry, what did you just say? And like he draws attention to it, and like also is like, are you guys like, can you guys see past like the veneer that he is presenting? And yeah, Doug did sort of like a really good job of that, of stirring things up in that way. And I don't know, man. Like a lot of people sort of they don't like Doug not because of his position, just because of the amount of controversy that he's willing to court. I would say more so than like they just didn't necessarily disagree with him, sort of like on any one issue. And
it's his methods.
Yeah, his very direct sort of like a Bracelet sort of call you out style. And I disagree with those people, and frankly, I think they mostly disagree with themselves. I just don't think that they've made the connection, because like I think this is just like I don't think this is like a product of the day. I think this is like a product of humanity, is that the ability to express yourself fully, authentically, and not to preference falsify. There's just like a lot of incentive to just like lie, that you're just to just misrepresent your true feelings, essentially. Yeah. There's very few like Doug, like out there, like whacking people and like sort of like with his baton, or ringing the alarms, like hasn't really made him many friends. It's sort of like it's polarized like a lot of people, and it's sort of like there's the poker sort of media world, and they're kind of like in their bubble, and like Doug is just absolutely not a part of that. And maybe the epitome of that is sort of like him getting snubbed at the poker award thing. But like it's just I don't know. I'm like big in like authenticity and not being full of shit, which is maybe why I don't like Negreanu. And Doug is sort of like the one fucking guy in poker that's like out there doing it in like a meaningful way. And even though you might not like the controversy in courts, like I feel like it's by like, you know, for the most part, like a gigantic net positive. So I don't get all the complaining. And, and anyway, so going back to the, I feel as though these people, they contradict themselves. They don't even agree with themselves. Is that I'm sure that they would, you know, the effects of sort of preference falsification and sort of sweeping things under the rug, that they, you know, that they're quite bothered by these things too, and they don't fully appreciate, you know, the cost or what it takes to have a culture where that is not the norm. And I feel like, yeah, Doug has done a really good job of taking a step towards making that the norm.
So, okay, and now the heads up for rolls. What you want to throw some numbers out there, or you want to refrain?
What do you mean?
Like odds.
We don't even know what the challenge is yet. Daniel said something about 200, 400 for like 10K hands, but then it was like backtracking and wanted to do something weird. So
when it's you could comment after it's actually said, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, so long as Negrani doesn't cheat, I think Doug is a big favorite. So we'll see. We'll see how that plays out.
So covering the topic that you just said, is like poker is a really unique industry in that the better you get, nobody wants to play with you. Every other industry is like the better you get.
But the exception, there is so like Doug and Ivy. There's like if you like are a celebrity in that way, it actually they actually kind of do weirdly like want to play with you. But if you're some like anonymous like crusher, yeah, they fucking hate you. So
I've talked to some people on Live at the Bike about like the transition to being a TV player. It's just a different life. You mentioned it, and we both mentioned it. I don't know if it was the last time we talked or privately, publicly, but we're on the same plane about our opinions on that. But in general, if you are a super crushing pro that doesn't want the spotlight to, you know, keep as much of your game private, that's one of the things that at least I did for like a really long time. Then it's just like, yeah, no, but like this thing where like if you are super good but nobody knows, or you're underrated, then how does that transpose to like in the real world? Because like in business, or if you're a scientist and you're super genius or you're super successful, you can be that hidden gem that people want to work with. But in poker, it's just like if you're a super crusher, okay.
I think you want to be in poker, at least I think you want to be on one end of the spectrum. Either end. You either want to be like completely like anonymous or have them think like sure you're not that good, or you just want to be famous and then you can maybe JRB it up and be like, I'm constantly losing and, you know, yada yada yada. I'm sure he's not. I'm sure that's all just like a facade. But yeah, God, dude, JR.
You know, I used to play the 200 no limit with him at Commerce. Like we literally start from the bottom, huh?
He's kind of like Garrett in the sense that like Garrett like puts off this like image that he's this like huge fucking degen, and like he is, but it's weird. It's like him, Jungle, and JRB all the same thing in common, where they all like have these like dynamics about themselves, and like it will affect the game and the players in the game, and then it's like they know that it's affected you, so now you're kind of almost like playing their game that you adjusted to them, so then they'll sort of adjust to you. So like I remember seeing like a hand. There's like I don't know, JRB like will like the crazy thing is he will punt it off. Like he will do something like incredibly noob and stupid, but part of me wonders if he's doing this like on TV as like advertising to them, and he's like, oh, it's so sick, like I run so bad like forever, and I'm like, bro, I know it's like, okay, I know it's mostly an act, but I actually kind of also think that part of it is also true. Like part of him does think you like run so bad and like can't believe fucking this, who whatever.
I did an exercise at JJ De La Garza, and we just did our top, like, or at least 5 instances where we remember running good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think all poker players, you know, to mitigate like all the complaining, because we're always going to remember the hands we lose, and we don't appreciate necessarily the ones that we got super super lucky for like massive pots. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just trying to like, put stuff out there that people don't necessarily do or think of to try to improve the environment. But it's just like the whole, and then the other thing about poker players, which is different, is that you're very individualistic. I mean, of course, you can have friends in the network, but unlike other things where you can cooperate to build like a product,
Yeah.
poker's like very individual with, of course, some people can have deals or share bankroll and something like that, but you're very individual with your success.
There's somewhat camaraderie in that, like you have your sort of clique, and you all sort of like talk strategy, maybe sell pieces, and you kind of are, yeah, to a certain extent, it's kind of on your own, but you do have like a bit of a team.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely around, but
It's not the same. It's not the same as like, because it's a team and like in a somewhat predatory zero sum game where you have like clear direct opponents opposition, and it's not, yeah, like they're kind of, when you make like the upstream ladder, like, how do you guys like this? Like, we like this, we don't like that. You have customers sort of like on your side. Like your customers in poker are like trying to like take your money.
got it. So it's been quite a while since talked to you and kept you for a bit from your valuable time. I appreciate your time.
Yeah,
So,
appreciate it on chatting. This was a lot of fun.
So guys, round of applause, smash the thumbs up, hit subscribe for the Ryan Fee of Upswing Poker, and we will catch you next time.